using to run SQL Server agent service account, SQL Server agent service. And you know, a lot of people have different opinion. Some people will say they see no reason why SQL agent and SQL Server, both services shouldn't be run under the same account. And some people will say no, you know, we should separate those because they have access to different components within the SQL Server, you know, DLLs, files, and also within the operating system. And other thing I notice is by default, SQL Server agent, you know, use local system account when you install SQL Server. And I oftentimes see in different installations that people do not change that account. And if you go to Microsoft Books Online, it clearly says do not run SQL Server Agent Service as a local system account. They still have it as a backward compatibility, and it will not be carry on going forward, so meaning this feature will be disabled in some other version, in some future versions. So that's something you definitely want to change, because local system account has more privilege than it needs to be, and you know, than the SQL Server agent needs. So you should definitely remove it. And if you're running in a big shop, or in most of the shops you have Active Directory, so I would suggest to run it under the Active Directory account, because then all your SQL Server agent accounts can be in a group policy, and it's like, you know, a lot easier to manage. You know, I already talked about the domain account, and then you also give it a privilege, you know, which is called logon as a service, because when you are running any component, or you know, the SQL Server agent as a service as we run, it needs access to certain components within the operating system. And if you see that link that I put there, it actually has very specific 5 steps what you need to click to grant that permission. And any link you see in my slide, I also summarize those at the end in a resource slide. So you know, you would also have it in one place. And now the next thing comes as, you know, okay, we have users. Now what kind of privilege we give the users for our SQL Server agent, right? Because you have, you know, different kind of jobs. You might have your, you know, your operators, your proxy accounts, and you might not be comfortable that everybody goes into the SQL Server agent components and changing stuff, right? And you can even choose that, you know, some of the users might not be even able to connect to SQL Server agent via their management studio. That's even controllable. So there are three roles. There are database specific roles under MSDB that you can control permissions. But of course, you know, by default, if somebody has a sysadmin privilege, they get access to your SQL Server agent component. And the way these roles work, they are, you know, list to more. Or most. So if you want somebody just to, you know, connect to the, I'm just going to bring up all 3 roles, and I'm not going to go into details, you know, what role give what kind of permissions. I put a link in Books Online. It has a clear grid which tells you all the details about these 3 roles. But one thing I just want to point out, that if you give permission to the SQL agent reader role, the second one, whatever permission is in SQL agent user role automatically get added. So they are all inclusive as you go to a higher, you know, higher privilege role. And if you want somebody, if you don't want somebody to connect to SQL Server agent at all, make sure they're not member of any of these roles, and they won't be able to even see SQL Server agent via Management Studio. So that's something I just want to mention. And most of these roles, what they do is, just to give you an example, SQL agent user role will make sure that you don't have permission to the jobs that are owned by somebody else other than you. So you won't be able to modify those, modify their schedule, or modify the content of those jobs. So that's you know, that's one of the main thing, that if there are developers, they're creating their own jobs, they're testing their own thing, you want to contain them within their own you know, own world, so they don't go and step into somebody else's space. And that link will take you to a grid where you can see all the details. And so next I'm going to talk about job schedule, but my primary focus is to talk about a feature that I see built into SQL Server Agent, but very few people take advantage. It's to run a job when my CPU is idle. But before that, when I was looking at that, I found, I thought I'll mention a few of the best practices you can say that I learned over the period of years, and I see people not using this and making their life more difficult. Just to give you an example, say you have a job that runs every day at a certain time, and for some business reason or some operations requirement, you want to skip that job today, just for one day. What I see is most of the people, they will go and disable their job. And next day morning they come, they run into, other server, other issues, and they forget to enable it, right? And the time passes by, something is not working correct. They say, oh, hey, why is not this working? And you go and look at it, oh, sorry, I disabled this job and I forget to enable it. I mean, this happened to me, so I never disable a job now. If I have to skip a run, what I'm going to do, I go and change the start date of it. So open your job properties and change the start date from tomorrow, skip today's date, and then you don't have to worry about it. You will not forget. Same goes for if you need extra run. Say like a job run every 6 hours. Say it does certain processing. You got a huge volume today. For business reason, the operations team asks you to, can we have extra run in between? So what do? A lot of time people will go and try to, figure out the schedule or, increase the frequency, and then they'll forget, and the same thing will happen. So what I do, I leave the job as the schedule as is, just add a one-time schedule. When you add a one-time schedule, you just run one time. After it runs one time, it gets disabled by itself. So you even don't have to think about it. You don't have to go and delete it. It will just sit there in a disabled state. Other thing I noticed, like, you got a change request, say you have to run something early morning, say like 2 o'clock, for example, and it has been tested, you're going to run it. I see a lot of people say, okay, I'm going to get up at 2 o'clock and I'm going to run this. And I see no reason. You can just, put it in a SQL Server Agent job and schedule a one-time job. And when you schedule a one-time job, you have a couple of options. If the job runs successfully, you can even decide to delete that job. If you do this more frequently, you don't want all these jobs to sitting there. So you can say, once my job run, delete it. But there's one caveat. I'll warn you about this. When you set this up to delete, your job history also get truncated. So what you want to do, and which I'll show you in some future slides, you might want to send your log file to a text file. In your operating system, in any of the disk, you can send it to a disk or to a storage as a text file. So even the job get deleted, the job history get truncated from the table, you still have the log and the output from the job. You can do that if you think you need to save the output for any reason. The last thing I want to mention here is, I don't know how many of you use this. Within SQL Server Agent, there are standard schedules. Like the schedules have a schedule ID. Say if you have a schedule, say run every day at 2 p.m. So that schedule has ID, and you can use that ID for many jobs. So you don't have to go and create that job schedule every time. But the caveat there is, if you change that job schedule from 2 to 3 p.m. in one job, it's going to go and change it in every job. So you want to be careful with that, because when I first noticed this, I had a hard time, like I'm changing this one job, why it's changing in all other jobs? And, I didn't know about this, when I first, was new into SQL Server. So then I figured out, oh, it's using one of those standard job schedules with the job schedule ID, and it's changing all. So I just thought I'll mention it. If you ever, step into it, you will know what to do. So this is a picture from a 8-core server. As you can see, the CPU is hot, running 100%. Imagine if your CPU is, for any reason, it's just a contrived example. If it's running 100% and then your rebuild index kick off, or your backup, or check DB, you probably don't want it, right? So you might want to control this and run these things when your CPU is a little bit idle. And SQL Server Agent has this feature. But there is also I would say a restriction on this, or it doesn't work the way you want to. and I'll show you what it is, and I'll also show you a solution how you can make use of this feature going forward. So to schedule when a CPU is idle, you first have to define what's the idle CPU, and it depends on your environment, right? So, just for this example, I picked up, if CPU is idle under 60% for 20 seconds, just so I can show you guys so I don't have to wait very long. But for your environment, it might be CPU is below X percentage for X minute, then kick off DBCC check DB or kick off backup or whatever works for you or you need. So to do this, first you create a definition, and then once you create an idle CPU definition on your job schedule, you will see a new item called under your schedule type, and you can pick up from there, and we'll see it in action. But again, there's a problem, what I said, and the problem is it doesn't work out of the gate, and I'll just show you in this picture. So if you look at the top picture where it says interval in seconds, so what I did here, I said my CPU is idle when it's under X percentage for 20 seconds. And if you see the job history, it's running every 20 seconds, every like 21, 22, 23 seconds. And this job is not doing anything, it's just checking at get date, just for an example. So the problem is, if you say for my situation, the idle CPU is under 30% for half an hour, the job will run, and then again, when your CPU is under 30% for another 30 minutes, the job will kick off again. So you have no control how frequent that job runs. And that's the problem, right? Because I don't want the job to kick off any time. I want to control it. I still want the CPU to be idle, but I still want to control if I want to run the job every hour, every 6 hours, once a day, once a week, or once a month. I want to have that control, and I need that, right? I cannot let a job run as many times as it wants. It can be any kind of job. So if you look at the bottom picture where I says hour interval, what I did here, I did not change my CPU idle definition. I still have the same definition, means CPU is idle under 60% for 20 seconds, but the job will only run every hour. And I'll show you how I accomplish this. And just to give it a little bit more clear or a graphical idea of what I'm talking about. So your CPU idle condition, meet your test run every 20 seconds. Then it goes and run the job. It fire the job, run it, and then it just it does it again. It does it again. You have no control. So what I did here, I still have the same CPU condition, idle condition. I have the job run only if enabled. Of course, the job cannot run when it's not enabled. So to disable the job, what I did, after the job run, I disable the job. I have a second step is going to go and disable itself, and I'll show you, in my management studio. And then when the CPU condition is idle, I schedule this job so it cannot fire anymore. So I have a control job which runs every hour. It goes and enables the job, and then it runs every hour. I know it can be confusing the way I'm describing, or I couldn't find a better way to show this, but I'm going to show you in a demo. So first I'm going to show you what a CPU idle condition means. I mean, how do I define this? So in the SQL Server agent, if you go to the Advanced tab, you see this. So you click the define idle CPU condition. I said average CPU falls below 60%. I know it's high, I'm just showing it for example, and I say remains 20 seconds. So 20 seconds is minimum. You cannot go below that. So once you define it, then in every job under schedule, you will see this option once you enable it. So in this case, this is by default is going to run whenever my CPU is idle. And as you saw there in the picture, if we go and look at this job history, you can see that it's kicking off every 20 seconds. I don't have any control. So what I did here, I said CPU idle customize my job name, but doesn't matter. So after it does its work, I have a second step. It goes and disables the job itself. And this control job, it runs every hour. So if you want it once a 6 hour, you're going to control it here. And once a day, you schedule it here. This is going to, call the other job. It get called, it get disabled, and then it will fire up again, whenever you want it. That's how I find the best solution. So I Googled it, how other people are doing it, and there are some cool solutions out there. But what people are doing, they were using PowerShell, putting their CPU condition and averaging it, and doing wait for delay and all that. And I really didn't want to go beyond the SQL Server built-in features because that was one of my goal, is to to find solutions whatever is built in, not using anything else. Not that I'm against using PowerShell or anything, I used it a lot, but that's the best way I find that within the SQL Server agent that I can I can do this. So I'm going to talk about job history a little bit. In job history, I'm going to talk about two things. Number one is the job log get truncated. I don't know how many of you see this, this dot that I'm pointing to with the red circle. And often you will see this, like you have a DBCC check DB failed, or you have a job that has a lot of output and it failed, and that's the that's the crucial time that you want to see your output, right? What happened? And you go and see this dot, and you're like, oh no, I need, this is the time I needed the whole job history, and now it got truncated. And if you see, I put a note there, if bigger than 3,998 character, it gets truncated. And I'll show you that why it happens. So if you look at this sys job history table, if you look at the definition, actually the column is an nvarchar 4000, and that's one of the reason that more than 3,998 characters get truncated. So there's another table called sys job steps logs, which has nvarchar -1, means unlimited. So you can use it, but by default it doesn't use that table to log your job history. So I'm going to show you under SQL Server Agent job history. When you set the output file, there are two options. One is that what I was talking about before. If you set up a one-time job, you can send your output to your storage or to your other LUNs. So this is an example that for example, I'm doing it in C, but I would rather avoid C. You probably want to use in one of your other LUNs. You can do there, or you can check that log to the table, and it's going to log to the log to that other table where I was showing you that the column type is nvarchar -1, means you are not going to lose your job history. It's not going to get truncated. One caveat here, it only keeps the last run, and if you want to keep for other runs, you can check that option where it says append output to existing entry in table, but you have to be careful because if you keep that on and it's the nvarchar max, so it's just going to keep appending. And it can get very, very big. So you have to be careful. If you're troubleshooting or if you're testing, you might want to check that on. But when you go in production, it's stable. You know that the job is working the way you want. You might want to check that off. You might want to uncheck it, the append output to existing entry in table. Otherwise, that table can get very, very big if you're doing it for many, many jobs. Now, how many of you seen this? So this is what you get when you install SQL Server Agent by default. So what it is saying that only keep 1,000 entries for all my job history, and for one job the maximum entry is 100. So I would probably guess, for most of the folks this doesn't work, and this should not work because on a large systems, I mean, only 1,000 entries is nothing. And the reason I start looking at it, I still have a server, it does it's a OLTP load, but it also tightly coupled with the decision support systems server. So we get these entries and then we flatten those and push via transaction replication to other systems. So there's a listener job. It goes every minute and go and look at different queues and wake up different jobs to flatten these rows. So all those, I think I have 62 jobs. They run pretty much every minute or two. So what was happening, the job history file was growing and growing. So somebody came to me, and we all do that. We open a job, right click, look at job history, and you get a timeout error. You get a timeout error every time that he tries this. So he came to me and said, hey, can you look at it? Why can't I look at the job history? Sure, you go, I look at the job history table, it's about 300 gig. And so I thought of, what I want. So I wanted a solution for myself, and I thought, this will be cool to have, that I want to control my job history per job category, or if my job is in a default category, I also want to control it per job. And then I might want different threshold for success and failure, right? Like I have jobs that run every 2 minutes. If they are successful, I probably don't want their job history for more than a day. But if they fail, I probably want it for a longer period. So you might have different requirements, but these are the things that I thought of. And I also thought of a default value, because if I have, say, like few hundred jobs, I don't want to put, entry for each one, that how I want the job history to be retained. So I probably leave it a default value for everything, unless otherwise I put a different entry for different jobs or job category. And details of this solution is in my blog. I also have it in my resource page. So when I gave this talk last time in few other places, a couple of folks actually sent me, told me, later on that they put this solution in their, in their systems. And not everybody will need it. Like if you have a lot of jobs running more frequently, you're losing history, or you're not keeping the right history, right? So like, you might have DBCC CheckDB running once a week. You might want to keep that for, if that fails, you might want to keep it for a few years to see what are the things that, it failed, or where you had the corruption on what pages or files. So what I basically did, this is a driving table, and this is just for example, I have job name, I also have category name, and I have two different columns, number of days to return if it's successful, number of failures days to return, so you can put different values. And you will have all this code, so I don't want to, talk too much about this. And I have two store proc, one store proc going to the driving table and look at what configurations you put. The second store proc go and grab those information and go against the job history table and do the real delete. And then you can schedule this job, depending on your need, once in every X hours or X number of days. And I have a fail-safe value in my store proc, which is 30 days. So if you download this code, you didn't put anything anywhere, it will still keep all the job history for 30 days. I just put it for a safety reason. If people just by mistake didn't realize that they have to configure anything and they put it in production, they don't lose all their job history. So we're going to talk about operators. So I really don't want to talk about it. I'm just going to demo it for you. But I'll tell you a little bit of why I want to use operators. So as you know, SQL Server Agent you can use for different reasons for jobs for your alerts, and you want to get notified, right? If your job fail or if a sudden alert fire or a sudden event occur, you want to get notified. So for notification, people use email. You can also use pager alerts and stuff. So I see a lot of time people hard code email address, right? And when somebody leave in the company or there is organization change, they have to go and now find out, okay, all the places they put this email, and they have to go and replace those with a new email. So it's too cumbersome. I find it a lot easier, a lot cleaner to use operators, because then if you have any change, you don't have to do anything. You just go to your operator and change your email address, or even better if you use your group address. Like here we use SQL Server DB at fmcna.com, and all the DBAs are member of that group. So you really don't have to do anything, because there are other teams that take care when there is a new hire, or if somebody moved to a different organization for different reason, that group kept, is sorry, kept up to date. So here, if you see, I created a, okay, you can't see it yet, sorry. So I'm going to do it again. So under SQL Server Agent, there's a tab operators. So under operators, I created one sysadmin. I'm going to open the properties and zoom it for you so you can see it. So I gave it a name, doesn't matter whatever you give. I just put my email address. But if you're working in a group, if you have a group email address, you put it here. And then you can use this name, sysadmin, and I'll show you. And one warning I want to give you here is, or not a warning, I would just say, in books online, if you read, they talk about netsend address and pager will be deprecated in future version, not to use this too. And I don't know if anybody tried to set up netsend in Windows 7 or beyond. It really doesn't exist anymore, but there's some workaround, and which is not easy. And as per books online, you should just use it for email address. But I know a lot of people, like even we use it here. You can even have a pager account which will page to those smartphones, and you can still use use it as an email address, but that's a different discussion. So once you create this operator, and I have a job here, and I'm going to zoom it. I know. So under notification, I'm using that operator name sysadmin when the job fails. So what this will let me do is, whatever email address is attached to that sysadmin operator name will always get notified. So I don't have to, go and change the email address, and I don't have to do anything. But if you have hard-coded the email address here, like I said before, you have to go and search it and replace in all the places that you use it. Even when you look at the alerts and event notifications, it's the same deal. You can use your operator instead of hard coding your email addresses. So I don't know how many of you use this, but I talk to folks all the time, and I notice many people don't even realize that under SQL Server Management Studio, there are built-in reports And these built-in reports, they come for free. You don't have to download any RDL, no setup, just right-click and look at this built-in report. So when I go back to my next demo, I'll show you, uh, you know, these are very cool. You can quickly find your most frequently failed jobs, your slowest jobs, and the jobs that are running more frequently. And the other one, the last one, the job steps execution history, actually is cool. It gives you a breakdown of, if you have multiple steps in a job, it gives you a full breakdown of per steps, which one failed, which one ran, and what's the average runtime. So I'm not going to take an exit from here, but when I go to next demo, I'll show you. So we'll talk about SQL Server built-in alerts. And the reason I want to talk about this is very powerful. This is very powerful, and it's a feature that comes within SQL Server agent, and you really don't have to do much to set this up. But I see in many places people don't take advantage of this. And just to give you an example, as I said, like, you have a process came in, a session, it's reading certain data, and you had a page corruption and they could not read it. And the error will bubble up to them, they're going to see it, and they have to open a ticket, contact somebody and all that. By the time it comes to you, probably you lost some time. And then you go to your error log, you might see it, and depending on how your alerts are set up, you got notified or no. Will it be cool that you get notified right away? Another example I can give you is, say, like, you have X number of processes blocked, and for X number of minutes. Just pick an example. Say if you want to get notified, so I have 5 sessions blocked for more than 3 minutes. I want to get notified right away. This is something you can use this. So I'll show you a couple of examples, how I did set this up, but these are just, for example, based on your need. You want to you might want to take advantage of this feature. One thing to remember, if you want to take advantage of this, if you want to get notified, your service broker must be enabled for MSDB, because service broker is part database, it's not instance level. So you have to turn it on part database, and for this you have to do it in MSDB. What I said before again, pager and net send options will be removed, so don't use those going forward. And so what I was talking about before, about the reports, if you, from standard reports, there are 2. If you go to top jobs, and I'm not going to drill down all the, you can do it, as you can see here, these 3 come here. But one thing, if you see, it also says here that these are all based on your last 7 days of your runtime. And I showed you how to truncate job history before, or how to manage. So depending on some jobs, if you are not keeping your 7 days, this will only take whatever you have. But if you have more than 7 days, these reports will be based on your last 7 days of history. And there's another one. Trying to find a job that I have multiple steps. Yep, this one. So as you can see here, so if I have 2 steps, it gives you per step stats for your jobs. So these are there. If you find this useful, you might want to take advantage. So I was talking about built-in alerts. So I already set this some of this up for you, but I'm just going to still show you, and the setup scripts will be there with the slides. So I'll just show you from GUI what I did here. So what I'm saying here is if I have block tasks more than 5, and I'm looking at the workload group stats, and there are a bunch of those. If you go to the drop down, I'm looking at block tasks, and if it's more than 5, then let me know. And I'm also saying if the condition persists, let me know every 3 minutes, and customize it as you need. So what are you going to do right now? I'm just going to, if you see in Adventure Works, I have a begin tran. I'm updating this table with set size to size. I'll run this and I'll leave this transaction open. So I'm going to take it in a different window. Is this big enough to, or, okay. So while this is running, I'm going to add 6 more clients, and those clients are going to try to update on the same table. And now if we come here, we have these blocked sessions. It's probably too small for you to see, so you can see here this. And now if we come here to our history, we can see that this fired alert. And I'm not going to wait for the email to come in. So what I did a test email, okay, which I'll show you later on. I'm just going to give another example. Select for disk corruption, right? So I downloaded this database from securityskills.com and with Paul Randall's permission. So if you try to do a select, you get this error. Oh, sorry, okay. Okay, I probably have to restart it. So I'm just going to skip this one. The other one I'm going to show you is WMI counters. And I know, for example, I'm showing you how to collect a deadlock graph, but if you're on SQL 2012 or above, I would highly suggest you to use extended events. But just for demo purpose, I'm showing you here that this is the namespace for SQL Server Agent, and I'm saying select start from deadlock graph. And one more thing you can do here is just not to let you know that there was a deadlock graph or there was a deadlock in your environment. What you can do, I can also kick off a job in my SQL Server Agent. So in this case, I'm going to get notified that there was a deadlock, but I'm also going to kick off a job in SQL Server Agent, which is going to collect that deadlock graph. And this code I downloaded from this website is just setting up some table just so I can demo a deadlock. So just doing update on employees, and we're doing a begin tran, so our transaction is open. We're going to go to window 2, and we'll do an update on supplies. And now on window 1, we're going to try to update the suppliers. And in window 2, we're going to try to update employees. And we'll see one of these should deadlock. So this one succeeded, this one deadlocked. And now if we go here, if we go to the history, we can see the time that the alert got fired. The other thing happened because of that job that I showed you. Let me just commit this. So the job went into one of my table and collected the deadlock graph. So if you look at the time, this is the time right now, and it has the full deadlock graph that we can go and analyze later on. So what I want to show you, like for the deadlock, this is one of the emails that you get. You can, put your own description, you can have your own comments, and if you see here, this also tells you that, what job it ran. So this is just a sample because I didn't want to wait for the deadlock graph to, for the email to show up. And the last thing I want to talk about proxies. So there's a lot of confusion about proxies, and some people are scared to use, use proxies. And when you want to use proxies, so in my experience, right, you want to run SQL Server Agent service with least privilege account that you need to, but for different reasons, for your operations or for business reasons, sometimes you might have to, get out of your OS and go to a file share, go to outside of your domain, and maybe grab a CSV file, grab a dump or something that you have to bring it in, and then you want to load some data or whatever it is, right? So I see often what people do, they will go and elevate the permission of the service account, which I will highly discourage people to do. The right thing will be to set up a job and set up a job step and let it run under a proxy account, and give that proxy account the elevated permission or whatever permission is required. So only that account and that component can interact with each other. And a lot of time people don't think through how to set up a proxy, and once you look at the steps and think a little bit, it's really not that difficult. There are just I said, what are the things that you want to use it for? So that, basically 3 steps. You create an account, give it all the permissions. Within the SQL Server, you create a credential, then you create the proxy, on top of that credential. And the other advantage in the proxy is SQL Server agent itself is divided into 9 different components. And you can tell your proxy account that I'm only giving you permission to run this component, so it cannot run or it cannot even go and do anything within the other components. And I'll show you an example of that. So you can control it into that granular level. And even within a job, if I have multiple steps, I can choose all the steps to run under the SQL Server Agent Service account, except one which I can run under proxy account. And I can mix match. I can have 2 different steps run under 2 different proxy accounts depending on what those steps are doing. So let's do, this will be a last demo. So in my case here, if you see here, my SQL Server is running under this agent account, and I also created a SQL Server agent proxy here. And I'm going to use this account, it's in my local machine, to create the credential and create the proxy account and then use it. And if you want to, I'll show you why these are different. So my service account is only a member of these 2 groups, whereas my proxy account is a local admin. I know I shouldn't give you local admin, but I just did it for demo purpose so I can show you what I'm trying to make the point. So once you come here, so I created a credential named demo credentials using that account. This is my local machine name, SQL Agent Proxy. I gave the passwords. And so once we have the, and I have scripts for you to create this if you want to. So we created the credential. Now if we come here under proxy, if you see here, so what I was talking about that time, all these are different components. So I created this demo proxy. It can only run command exec. It cannot run ActiveX script. It cannot go within the replication distribution agent or merge reader or for merge replication. It cannot go into any of these other components. So it can only run if your SQL Server agent job step is doing the operating system command. And how did I create this? If you go here, I just gave it a name and I'm using this credential and I'm saying this only has permission to this subsystem. That's it. It cannot do anything else. So what I'm going to do here, just for demo purpose, I'm going to create two text files, and we'll try to delete these two text files via a SQL Server agent job. So, I already did the setup and I'll include this. So I'm running this job right now and we run the job. We come here, the files are still here, so it definitely failed. And if we see why it failed, access is denied. And we know that the SQL Server agent account doesn't have permission. So what I'm going to do now, I already created the proxy account. I'm modifying that job step to run under demo proxy. So if we look at here, if you see it's running under SQL Server agent service account, and we go and this to run under proxy account. And you see this. So now if I run the job, we come here and we don't see those text files anymore. And if we go and look at the job history, it went and deleted those files. So these are all the resources, and these are my contact with my Twitter hashtag LinkedIn and my blog with my email address. And thank you for attending. So I know we have 3 minutes, so I'll go through any questions that you have. And if we don't get to all, if you send me a note, I'm sure, I promise that I'll respond to you.
Okay, let's go through the questions. I do apologize to people. It looks like my screen was not sharing during the opening slide presentation. This lecture was being recorded, and I will get the slide deck and upload it. It will be listed under the dba.sqlpass.org under the meeting archive tab. So that's where the recording and the slide deck will be posted. And then I'm just going to read some of the questions. And I don't know, I think they were related to specific pages. Why not just change the schedule to begin at a future date if you want to skip a single run?
I think that's what I recommended to use a future date. I'm sorry, did I misunderstood the question?
No, I thought you did do that. So the next one is, do you know on the CPU idle option what SQL Server versions that's available with?
I know it's available under 2012, 14 above. I can quickly look at 2008 for you right now. I have in front of me and let you know. I don't have a 2005 right here in front of me, so I don't know that. Yeah, it's available in 2008 also. 2008 R2. I can, if you shoot me an email, I can check 2005 and let you know if you need to, if you have 2005.
And I'll be sending you the question list as well.
Sure. Sure.
Is it says the output file configuration, the question is it on a per job basis? And I
Yes.
think that was, yes.
Yes.
It would be nice to have the T-SQL for the 20 slowest running jobs.
Oh, I'm sure, I mean, if you're interested, these RDLs actually are available publicly. So if you're interested, you can download these RDLs, and a lot of people have done it. They have customized it. And so once you download the RDL, I'm sure you'll find the T-SQL. These RDLs are public and they're available. If you Google it, you'll find it. I know a lot of people made extension to those reports and customized it based on their needs. So.
Do you have any experience with the SQL agent in a multi-server administration mode?
Yes, I do. I do know about it, and I tested it. Mike Helwig, who leads our Boston user group, he talks about it extensively. We don't use it in our environment for different reasons because we control jobs in a completely customized in our own way. So.
Can you show your contact information again, that screen?
Sure, I can. Sure, I will.
And then there's a question about copying agent jobs to the availability group's secondary target.
Yes. So that's also a very common question that people ask. And if you Google about this, I have seen people using PowerShell script. I myself, long time before, used to use an SSIS package that will go nightly, check the diff. It will diff between all the jobs, all my logins, all the alerts, notifications, operators, and it will sync it. So there are a lot of resources online. People used it, and I also blogged about how do you run jobs only in the active node, right? So you want to set up jobs in both node, so when you fail over, you don't want to scramble, but you don't want all the jobs to run in both nodes. There are certain jobs, yes, you probably want to run in both nodes for different reason, but that's a different discussion. But if you have a job that I only want to run in my active node, there are piece of code, and his Twitter hashtag is angrypat. His real name is not coming into my head right now. He blogged about it extensively. I actually literally stole his code, copied his code, and modified it a little bit, and I use it in my environments all the time for my own, based on what I need it for in availability group.
I do that as well. we have a first step in all our jobs, which checks
Exactly.
to see, are you secondary? If you are secondary, it stops the job and then
Yeah,
moves
so
on to the next step if it's the primary.
exactly.
And then there are third-party tools and products out there which can also assist with moving jobs between servers, and especially if they're multi-node. We have a DBA admin tool set that we use, and there's copy jobs as one of those. So you can look at the vendors that support pass. You know, this is, I'm sure, I use the product from Idera, but I'm sure Redgate and some of the other vendors probably also have products if you have a little bit of a budget. Since they're admin tools, it's usually done per seat and not per server, so it's a little less expensive. That's all I have for the questions. I'll save the log off. We will be posting again to the virtual chapter website. There's an archive tab. Hopefully either later today or tomorrow it will be posted up there. And Toya, I wanted to thank you for the presentation, and if you can email me the slide deck, I'll also get that uploaded. And if there's any scripts, we can zip those up and we can upload those as well.
Sure, I'll give all these tips to set all this up. And thank you for having me. Thanks to all of you for joining in the middle of the day of your workday.
We really appreciate your time. This was a very worthwhile presentation, just going to the ins and outs of all the things with the SQL agent. Very helpful. Thanks again. And we should have another presentation in a couple weeks. Just keep checking our website. Thank you.